Hello everyone, my name is Hannah Mary Goodlad, and I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today. I would have absolutely loved that. However, we are where we are, and it's great to be with you virtually. I work for Equinor. I'm a geologist by background, but I work in the renewable part of the business now. Today, I'm going to talk about transition, and it's a really important word, both in terms of geology, but also the energy transition and careers and technology in transition, and how we as young women can really think about the transition that we want to have in our careers. So I'll talk a bit about myself, the energy transition, technology in transition, and then finish up with a broader picture on geology, on leadership, and what it's going to take for the future. So, a little bit about myself. I grew up in the Shetland Islands, which is 60 degrees north, a small island in the middle of the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. And I could show you pictures like this all day long, which is sand, sea, sun, and cute Shetland ponies. But the reality of my childhood was probably more like this. Really harsh, brutal conditions. You know, we are a rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we get exposed to a lot of really rough, hostile weather. But it's this sort of hostileness, this resilience that really built up a perspective and a culture of innovation and endurance within Shetlanders. And for a small rock with 23,000 people, Shetland has done all right, and it's always looked to the sea for its resources and its industry. And I grew up surrounded by industry, both in terms of oil and gas. There at the bottom, that's the Sullom Voe oil terminal. Top left, aquaculture, so the fish farming industry and production. And then top right, the fishing industry. And these three main industries really shaped my childhood. And I could see what impact industry, when done well, what impact it had on society and on the sustainable growth for a country or a region or even a small place and an island like Shetland. And it was this inspiration and seeing industry done in the correct way, in a way that really contributed to the economic success of Shetland. It really inspired me to try and get my hands into industry and try and get my hands into doing something to shape the community that I lived in, or shape the country and shape the future, I guess. So it was no surprise that I was inspired by nature, inspired by the surroundings of Shetland, by the ocean, by the land, and it's no surprise that I chose geology as my subject. So here's some old photographs of me, and it's actually quite nice to see these photographs and see that maybe I still look kind of similar to how it was. But I did chemistry and geology undergrad in 2012 at Glasgow University. And this picture is a wild day in Mull on my field trip on the island of Mull in my mapping project. And then I went on to study petroleum geoscience at Imperial College in London. And that was great. That was a really fantastic experience. Both these universities shaped me beyond belief, and both gave me such a springboard to really think about my career in a broad way and think about how I could contribute back to the energy industry. I should say, the right-hand picture there is a picture of Utah in the States. And if you choose geology, you get to really travel the world. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to try it out and do it as my subject. It takes you to some incredible places, and the subject of geology takes you to meet some incredible people. So that's another plug for choosing it. So after university, I wanted to enter into a company that was providing energy and doing energy in a different way. And that company for me was Equinor. It's a Norwegian company, a Norwegian state company, but it has a presence in 23 countries globally and a workforce of around about 30,000 people. So it's a big beast, and it's a wonderful company to work for. The purpose of Equinor is to turn natural resources into energy for people and the progress for society. And I think that's such a powerful phrase. At its heart, energy elevates people out of poverty. It improves lives. And to be in the energy industry and to know that you're having an impact on that, there's no better feeling. I started my career as a geologist in oil and gas in a big industrial project called Mariner, drilling thousands of meters below the surface of the earth to find the oil that would power Scotland. And this field, the Mariner field, is an absolute giant of a field. It will be producing for 30 years. It's providing 800 local jobs here in Scotland. It's keeping the lights on for the local Aberdeenshire area and beyond. And it's a real feat of engineering. When you're standing on this platform, you really realize what a fantastic industry this is to work in, and how the work that you're doing has contributed towards that. I always went into the energy industry to try and change things from the inside out, and I'm incredibly proud of the oil and gas work that I've done in my career. But I also wanted to try something different, and I wanted to be more rounded as a scientist and be more rounded as an energy professional. So I started to think about what are the skills that a geologist has that enable them to go and transition and transfer into other parts of the energy industry. And I stumbled across two things. Geology enables you to handle risk and deal with uncertainty in very adapt ways. And this enabled me to think about, well, how can I take the scientific knowledge that I have and use it across? And I got the chance to work in the renewable space in Equinor. So I now spend my days not necessarily just climbing turbines. That's me on the left there, climbing one of our floating wind turbines. But I spend my days now looking the world over as to where we can start to think about building new wind farms and strategy for how we grow in the new regions. And I absolutely love my job. I get to meet some amazing people, just like geology, and I get to travel to some great places, just like geology. And I know, like I felt when I worked in oil and gas, I know that I'm making a difference. And I know that I'm making a difference in providing energy, but also in helping build a sustainable future for the energy industry. I want to talk a little bit about transition and the energy transition in itself. You know, we are at the absolute forefront and the brink of something massive. And we're well along the way of the energy transition. But the way that we demand energy, the way that we use it, distribute it, is going to change dramatically in the next 5 to 10 years. You know, this is probably the only slide that I have with some concrete graphs on it, but it's important because it really paints a picture of where we are. On the left, you see that the renewable space is growing. So by the time we're at 2050, by the time probably we're at 2030, you're going to see a huge amount of the total energy mix be dominated by renewables. Oil and gas will still be there and still be important, especially for balancing out baseload. But there's more of the pie to be won when it comes to renewables. On the right-hand side, the cost is coming down as well. It's no longer the case that renewables are expensive. Renewables actually are the most efficient power generation form in the UK, and they are the most cheapest. We've seen that cost half in the last decade. So renewable space is growing and the cost is coming down, and that is a really winning combination. So decades of growth ahead for renewables and decades of change actually for the energy space. For Equinor, We really want to become an offshore wind major, and we're building in 3 specific regions: US East Coast, UK North Sea, and then the Baltic Sea, which I work with. And for Equinor, it is not about oil and gas or renewables. It's about both, and they are interconnected. We use the people, the technology, and the finance from oil and gas to really support our renewable business. Without those 3 factors, we wouldn't be able to do as successful projects as we do on the renewable side. So they're 2 sides of the same coin: oil and gas and renewables. And we, as Equinor, as a broad energy company, we see that the 2 factors are really going to be playing hand in hand, side by side, over the next few decades. But I want to talk a little bit about 3 specific areas in where a geologist can contribute to the energy transition. And this is not what I work in just now. I work on the more commercial side of the business, but at the same time, this is where I see a lot of my historically oil and gas colleagues making the jump into renewables. Number 1 is carbon capture and storage. Subsurface knowledge and the knowledge of geology here is critical, because what we want to do is take the carbon dioxide out of the air and be able to bury it underneath the ground. And we need to know the reservoirs that are able to take that carbon dioxide. Secondly, is blue hydrogen. And so this is being able to still produce gas from a hydrocarbon perspective, still explore for gas and have geologists do that, but being able to take away the carbon part of it and produce hydrogen. And we have a number of projects within the company that are exploring this. And again, geologists are critical because we need to know where to store the hydrogen when energy demand is low. So we look for things like salt aquifers in the Zechstein salt on the east coast of the UK, for example. And then the third one is offshore wind. And this is the one where I actually have most of my experience is in offshore wind. And again, we need geologists here because we need to understand where to build a wind farm. And we need to know the shallow subsurface, not the thousands of meters from oil and gas, but we still need to really expertly understand where we are building these turbines. And secondly, as we model airflow through the turbines, there are similarities to how fluid flow actually works through pore systems within rocks. This is getting very technical, but I want to stress that geologists are key to renewables. Geologists are key to so many things, and I'll touch on that towards the end. And remember, a geologist's way of thinking is unique, and the skills that you learn as a geologist are really valuable. One final picture here. When we think about energy systems, we need to start joining the dots. And this is what we as a company are starting to do. I said before that we don't see things as oil and gas or renewables. We see things connected. And as we move forward in this space where we're going to see a lot more of development in the oceans, we're going to have to start thinking about how we best utilize that ocean space better. So in terms of food production, energy production, oil and gas, renewables, being able to do smart things when it comes to hydrogen or biofuels, we need to start seeing the totality of the energy system. And geologists and engineers are fundamental to that. So it's a really exciting and interesting time to be starting to think about a career in the energy space. So I'm going to finish up with some slides on geology and on careers and geology transition, and a wider piece actually on leadership. Geology is historically, and in my view, wrongly seen as a subject about the past. That geology is about fossils, and it's about earth systems and strata that belong to an age gone by. But we really need to start thinking about geology as the here and now, being geologists for the future and geologists to really start thinking about sustainable growth. Two main things that have really happened in the last 5 years are, number one, the Paris Agreement, where countries came together to commit to keeping the temperature below 2 degrees. And the second one is the Sustainable Development Goals, again created, I think, in 2015 by the UN. And these are a set of global goals that companies, countries, civic and national society have signed up for, about a kind of planet that we want to see, a kind of planet that harnesses its resources in a correct and sustainable and manageable way. The point I want to stress here is geology is absolutely critical to achieving both of these goals. These are the two most, in my view, these are the two most important factors that are going to influence our world and our dynamics in the next 10 to 15 years. And if we fail on either of them, we are going to have a harder future than the one that we would be with them. And geology is critical to both of these. This is a really busy slide, but I want to show it to demonstrate how important geology is across the science sector. Geology is typically viewed as a feeder for the oil and gas industry or a feeder for mining, but it is so much more. I can't think of a subject that takes technology and science right from the outer limits of our atmosphere to thousands of meters below the subsurface of our Earth. And geologists have a grasp on all of this, whether it's hydropower, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's renewables, whether it's engineering geology, building cities for the future, mining, volcanology, battery technology, planet science, understanding the very nature and system of our planet. Geologists are key to this. And if you look at the breadth of where geology is and what it contributes to, I can't understand how you can't get excited by that. I think it's fantastic, and I think that more that we can do to really champion what geologists are and what geologists could be for the future, the better. And I really passionately believe that actually the future of geology is around building this narrative that geologists can be Earth stewards. It's about Earth stewardship. We need to change the narrative and the impression of our subject of geology. For too long now, geologists and geology has been viewed by the public through a lens of exploitation of resources. We really need to change that, and we need to be proud and stand up and say, actually, we as scientists, we as geologists understand the Earth. We understand her past, her present, and her likely future. We understand the processes of Earth, and we understand the systems that built her. And with that knowledge comes great responsibility. Great responsibility in terms of the stewardship of the planet, in caring for the systems, but also sustainably managing the resources that the Earth contains. And I believe that there's no better people to do that than geologists. Taking that idea of Earth stewardship, I want to take a minute to talk to you about leadership. And I know that I am talking to a group of young women who are embarking out in the beginning of the next stage of their life. And that is so exciting. Really harness that excitement. There is so much that you can do. And the world is crying out for a new type of leadership. We have so many massive issues to deal with, whether it's the acute issue of COVID right now, climate change that is coming very fast and happening right now, population growth, and many vulnerable displaced people searching for home. Leadership is needed now more than ever before, and never underestimate your power to be able to change things, to be able to change things in your own sphere or inside out or outside in. Leadership needs to be done differently. Leadership with compassion, with empathy, with collaboration. Something different from the divisive division that has been before. And as females, as women, I believe that we have a lot to contribute here in terms of our leadership style and the qualities that we bring. The bottom right picture there just illustrates how far we have to go. And I'll just say to you this, try and inject colour to pictures like that. Try and inject colour to your lives. Try and inject colour to the way that you choose to work and the work that you choose to do. And by that, we will be able to change the world. To change the world through geologists in stewardship of resources, and to change the world through positive, collaborative, caring leadership. I'm going to end with this image. For me, it's a really powerful image and one that speaks a lot to me about where we're going as a world. It's a picture of a woman, and my husband always says I should point out that this is not me. But it's a picture of a woman looking out at the future and wondering what the world will hold for her and her unborn child. You've got the symbolism there on the horizon of the turbines, which represent the future of energy. But she is so reliant on that gas canister to provide her the cup of tea here and now. It's a powerful image. And we stand before the biggest change that our energy systems have ever seen. Our energy systems are going to change in the way that energy is demanded, in the way in which energy is produced, and change in the way in which energy is used. It's no easy task to do this change. And it's a task that's going to require a level of collaboration and cooperation that this world has not experienced before. But we have to stand ready. And us as scientists, us as geologists, us as people of vision and future, we need to be able to think about the better world that we want to see and be able to rise to the challenge. And I believe that we all want to see a better future for ourselves and for the generations to come. But we've got to be bold and make the change. I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen.